Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyerboxingnews.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, I'm not going to pull any punches in this video. Okay, let's just talk straight. Let's just be as blunt as possible. I'm staying away from the Rafael Marquez-Christian Mijares fight. Now, no doubt, both of these guys are very talented, right? Marquez is really a great technician. I encourage people to go back in his history and look at his fight against Tim Austin. I view that fight as a masterpiece. I've enjoyed his work quite a bit. But understand, he was in several wars with Israel Vazquez, right? He's older. He's now in his late 30s. And understand that he has lost his last two fights to guys who, after fighting him, have gone on to lose fights, right? Juan Manuel Lopez, quite frankly, I fought on talent. Rafael Marquez should have beaten him. Even when Juanma was riding high, I really questioned Juanma because I thought Juanma was really, just a big left hand. And I always questioned Juanma's complete game. I believe that Rafael Marquez Juanma video is still up. I certainly haven't deleted it. But I thought Marquez was going to win that fight. Instead, Marquez seemed to be overpowered. So, of course, along comes Orlando Salido, and he literally dismantles Lopez, right? Well, Marquez then fought Toshiaki Nishioka, the same fighter who just lost to Nonito Donaire, and he started fast. Right? It looked like he might have the upper hand, although in that fight, I'll concede, I thought Nishioka was going to give him all he could handle. That's exactly what happened. Nishioka starts landing his left hand with regularity. He's a southpaw. And Marquez didn't seem to make the adjustments that he would have made when he was younger. So I don't know which Marquez shows up. Now, Christian Mijares is scary because, of course, he beat Jorge Arce, looked great, but then when he fights Vic Darchinyan, he looked like he couldn't take Vic's aggression. Now, granted, Darchinyan has a huge punch for that weight class, right? But Darchinyan came in, you knew what he was going to do, and Christian had no answers for it. Right? He's down early in that fight, hits the canvas, then he gets stopped later in that fight. Darchinyan's having his way at the end of that fight. So I really don't know what to make of that fight. That's a fasten your seatbelt type fight. That fight, quite frankly, could go either way. Right? Let's shift gears. There's a fighter who I've long considered to be one of the best in the sport. If you like a guy with a great jab, right? If you're the kind of person who, watched Larry Holmes in A Different Generation and just thought, man, what a great jab. If you enjoy watching Vladimir Klitschko in the early rounds of his fights, where he's just bludgeoning some guy with a jab, and like most great jabbers, basically lets his opponent know that if you can't get by my jab, this fight is over. I won't have to go to plan B or plan C. If you're that kind of boxing fan, then you need to know about and pay real close attention to lightweight champion Miguel Vazquez. This guy, simply put, has one of the best jabs in boxing. It's so good that the guy can just throw it out there and, like Larry Holmes, even though he has other skills, right? Just like Larry Holmes, this guy can literally just go on cruise control and jab you to death. If you can't get by the jab, then it doesn't matter what else you have in your arsenal. You're not going to be able to get close enough to hurt Miguel Vazquez. Now let me just say this. He's fought some big names, right? His only losses are to Saul Alvarez and Timothy Bradley. And understand, he went the distance against both. He's also fought big hitters like Breedis Prescott, the Conqueror, the guy who knocked out Amir Khan in a memorable early KO, and Ji-Hoo Kim, who is a very aggressive, very hard-hitting fighter, right? And of course, after rocky moments in both fights, Vazquez established the jab and literally dictated the rest of the fight. Now, I'm a believer that where you make money is in the gap between public perception, right? The hype, the publicity, and the reality. In my opinion, Miguel Vazquez, who is the lightweight champion, right at 135 pounds, if he wanted, if he fought these guys, I would take him over Juan Manuel Marquez and Brandon Rios. Right? Vazquez is actually a better fighter than Richard Abril, who I thought beat Rios rather convincingly. Right? And of course, I believe that Marquez, who seems to have Manny Pacquiao's number, has slowed down a little bit and would have a very hard time against the younger lightweight champion. Right? Vazquez's nickname is the Puppet. It should really be the Puppet Master, because it looks like in his fights he's dictating where both guys are in the ring. And keep in mind, there's a space between punches. You throw a punch, you reload. There's a little gap there. Few people in the sport manage that timing better than Miguel Vazquez. His jab at times, when he wants, and I believe this is by design, has a hitch in it. You have to see it to understand what I'm saying. It has a hitch in it. And so even when guys know the jab's coming, they get hit with it flush. Now let's talk about Marvin Quintero. Big punch, right? He's typically knocking out guys early in fights. But understand, with that big punch comes big risks. And Quintero has been KO'd 3 times in his career. Right? He's a guy who does have good legs, but he needs to get close to you to hurt you. His money punches are uppercuts and hooks. My point to you is he's not going to get close enough to Miguel Vazquez to be able to land those punches. There's a height discrepancy in this fight. Vazquez is 3 inches taller than Quintero. You give a tall guy with a great jab the advantage of length. Just look at most of the opponents fighting Vladimir Klitschko, and you have a whole lot of problems. Let me also point out, too, that don't be fooled by Vazquez's relatively low, less than 50% knockout ratio. When Vazquez needs to throw power punches, he can, right? This fight is such that I'm afraid to even make a distance prediction. All I'm going to say is I'm rolling with Miguel Vazquez in his fight against Marvin Quintero, right? I believe Vazquez is one of these underrated jewels in the sport. Put another way, Vazquez against Amir Khan. I know Amir Khan's a much bigger name. I understand Amir Khan has a big punch. I understand Amir Khan is a tall man. But if Vazquez were to fight Amir Khan, especially given that Amir Khan doesn't really move his head that much and is going to have to retool his game after leaving the wildcard gym and Freddie Roach and joining Virgil Hunter, I would take Miguel Vazquez over Amir Khan. I think this guy is that good. And keep in mind, we're talking about the lightweight champ at 135. I'm giving you names at 140, elite names, that I believe this guy would beat. I think he's one of the underrated jewels in boxing. Let me say this, though. If you are going to hedge the bet, then I would hedge it, Vazquez to win, hedged against Quintero by KO. Quintero has a puncher's chance. Okay, let's move on to an interesting fight. Mauricio Herrera. Interesting name. Has had some big wins, right? And he's fighting Karim Mayfield. Now, let me just say this. Herrera is the kind of fighter who looks courageous in the ring. He's an overachiever. Doesn't have that much hand speed, right? What he is really a guy who's just a gamer. He has a lot of heart. So there he was fighting Ruslan Provatnikov. Understand, huge puncher, right? Huge puncher. And of course, he's hanging in there. His eyes were banged up. He could barely see. There's blood, there's redness. He hung in there, literally, and just refused to quit. Just kept coming forward. Just kept throwing punches. Now, while I thought Provatnikov won that fight, while Teddy Atlas, who was scoring the fight and announcing the fight, thought Provatnikov won the fight, Mauricio Herrera had the crowd on his side and he won them over during the fight, right? They were cheering him because he looks charismatic in the ring. He looks like a guy giving it his all. And of course, he got the decision over the much more highly touted Provatnikov, right? Well, here is Herrera again, and Herrera, of course, has fought other big names and has done admirably against them. Here's the problem. Karim Mayfield fights what I call an ambush style. He's outside, he comes inside with hard punches, then he gets back outside. He has extremely quick hands. He is a great athlete. He has great balance. He has great legs. He can move around the ring, right? To sum it up in one word, Karim Mayfield, quite frankly, is the better talent, right? Talent wins fights. It's not effort, in my opinion. It's talent. You either can throw the fastball 95 miles an hour or you can't, right? Karim Mayfield can. There are parts of his game that, quite frankly, I'm a skeptic of. Ambush fighters are all or nothing. They jump in. They don't really fight you traditionally, where they stay in, fight, learn inside skills. I'm a guy who's more partial to the Bernard Hopkinses of the world and the Andre Wards of the world, fighters who can fight you outside, can then step inside and say, let's make this a phone booth, and can fight you inside. When I see an ambush fighter, whether it's David Haye, whether it's Jean Pascal, or whether it's Karim Mayfield, even though these guys are great athletes and can come in throwing bombs, I always wonder, why can't the guy stay and fight? What happens if the opponent is able to back this ambush fighter up against the ropes and not give him a chance to move around the ring? We saw that in the Bernard Hopkins masterpieces against Jean Pascal. I just don't think Mauricio Herrera is that fighter. And I just don't think he hits hard enough or has the skill set of a Bernard Hopkins to know how to slow down a superior athlete, an ambush fighter with superior speed, a guy who can jump in on a dime and throw bombs. So I'm leaning toward Karim Mayfield in that matchup. Okay, so to sum up, I like Mayfield over Herrera. I like Vazquez over Quintero. Right? Hedged against Quintero by KO. I'll give Quintero the punch. Right? And I'm just staying away from the Rafael Marquez, Christian Mijares fight. Both of those guys are technicians. I just wonder what each has left in the tank. Both guys are over 30. Marquez has actually been dropping fights of late and, of course, has been through wars with Israel Vazquez. So I always wonder when I see a guy who's literally been on the front lines in wars and now he's well into his 30s and he's actually dropping fights and he's complaining of injuries, and I see him literally jump out in fights, look good early and then fade badly. I really wonder what that guy has left. Right? All in all, I think at the end of the day, you're going to be looking at Miguel Vazquez and you're going to say, wow. Right? Understand, he fought Canelo multiple times. Now, I've never been able to get a film of their first fight. But the folklore in boxing is that Vazquez more than held his own. Keep in mind, he was a new fighter at the time. So then, of course, you have the rematch. And understand what I think of Canelo. He's one of the hardest punchers in the entire sport. So for Vazquez to go the distance against Canelo twice tells you all you need to know about his survival skills. Take a look at the lightweight champ. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. I understand there are other fights going on this weekend, but I'd need to research them to come up with an opinion. I'm not going to just throw one off the cuff, okay? So keep that in mind. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at DwyerBoxingNews.com and GamblersAdvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.